Good morning, everyone. It's now 10 o'clock, so we are going to get going in the interest of time. I'd like to welcome everyone to this morning's training on CRICE, where we will take a look at the history, the why, the what, and the who of CRICE, the purpose and possible uses of the CRICE course, and an overview of the 3 different types of CRICE cards that you can get. We will allow for questions via the chat. I'm going to hand over to Zandile from Massoum Training. Over to you, Zandile.
Thank you for that, Caroline. Good morning to everyone. Thank you and welcome once again for joining the session. As mentioned from Caroline, my name is Zandile Mthembu. I am from Massoum Training Solutions, and I will be taking you through the training today for CRICE CAMS. So before we do continue, I do understand Caroline has highlighted a few of housekeeping, but I would like to give everyone a moment just to go through the attached slide and to highlight once again that you can please use the chat to ask any questions that will be addressed at a session at the end of the presentation. So CRICE CAMS, which does stand for the company representative in a clinical environment with a controlled access and monitoring system, is a SAMIT initiative that is administered by Massoum Training Solutions. The program is currently in its final phase, so phase 3 of piloting. In the December of 2019, CRICE initiated its phase 1 of pilot, where it became digitized and 4 companies were involved within this phase. The second phase then included the migration and transfer from the old system to the new system that is currently implemented, which has been a successful phase. And now for the final phase 3, is when developments are being made for new features to improve the current system, as well as the fixing of any areas that are currently being encountered by the users. Just to outline once again from the overview of the topics that we will be covering today. So we will have a look at the history of CRICE, where we will be covering the reasons for the CRICE initiative, the conception of the program, as well as what the program offers. We'll then move on to the purposes and the possible uses of the CRICE CAMS program, where we will outline the purpose of CRICE, as well as then look at some of the uses for the hospitals, the companies, as well as the CRs. We'll then finally touch on the CRICE apps as well as reporting, where we'll have a look at both the company point of contact and the hospital point of contact mobile and desktop apps, as well as the learner apps and their scanning journey, and then finally having a look at the monthly reports and the examples of the real-time emails. So why CRICE? In the year 2011, SAMIT posed an important question, which was following multiple reports of out of scope of behavior. And this question was asking whether or not the CRs were adequately trained to be within theaters, ICU, as well as CSSDs. And this is then the question that led to the birth of CRICE. With this question being posed, it then also came with a realization by the SAMIT Industry Board, as well as the members of the company members of the board, that it's actually their responsibility, and they need to take on or make actions and efforts to take on this responsibility, which includes the responsibility of the industry to protect not only itself, but as well as the patients and the hospitals, as well as its responsibility to then assess the criteria of requirements for the access that the CRs need when they are accessing the facilities. The SAMIT then, as an industry board, also then had an important role in playing to actually bring together the member companies and other industry players together with hospital groups in a discussion in efforts to brainstorm possible solutions, and then as well as then facilitating the implementation of the solutions that have been brought about. So CRICE is in fact a credentialing system, and it offers manual checks as well as training that can or become appropriate in times of the heightened sensitivity to the risk of infection and communicable disease spread. It also then does these checks and training through addressing the scope of practice of the CRs. So it outlines what the CRs can and cannot do when they are within the clinical environment. It also then addresses the multiple roles and responsibilities for not only the CRs, but as well as companies, the hospitals, and the HCPs through the multiple modules as well as features that are available through the program. And then it then also addresses the legal implications that CRs would need to be aware of when they are actually performing their duties. And this could be through the scenarios, the multiple scenarios that the program offers that actually highlights and goes through different cases to represent these legal implications. It also then provides a controlled access and monitoring system. And this speaks to the fact or addresses matters like unauthorized access to patients and patients' information, as well as the unauthorized practice of medicine by CRs, and also then addresses the increased business risk to hospitals and companies that then arises through this unauthorized access and practice. So the conception of a CRICE was actually following an unprecedented collaboration between the SAMIT board and its member companies, as well as Mossum Training Solutions, who are the developers and the administrators of CRICE. The development of the program also then included efforts and an impact from different hospital groups and orthopedic associations such as Netcare, Life Health Group, and Mediclinic. So the purposes and possible uses of CRICE. So for hospitals, by using CRICE and the features that are available through the program, they can rest assured that the CRs that are actually visiting and accessing their facilities are from bona fide companies. So through the previously mentioned manual checks that are completed by Mossum before enrolling a company, they do check that these companies actually does exist and is registered in South Africa. It does check that the company does in fact have a valid VAT number and is conducting activities that would need or require access to hospital facilities. So this then speaks to how the hospitals can rest assured in knowing that the CRs are from legitimate companies. And through this, then they can be assured that the CRs are in fact familiar with their scope of practice and regulation. And this is of course through then the modules and the training that the CR would need to complete and pass before they are awarded with an access card. The hospital can also then be sure or have the assurance that there is, of course, an accurate information flow. So as we do know, the CRs become an important and primary source of the comprehensive and reliable information related to products. And this is for the HCPs and other hospital staff. So it does become important that they are then conducting the product trainings where they can relay this information, and the hospitals can be then rest assured that it is accurate information that is being relayed. And this is through the product training for CRs that they need to undergo and would then need to sign an appropriate declaration once they have completed the product training. The hospital can also then be assured that the CRs have received the required vaccination, and this would then be appropriate to the related access or level of access that is required. And then it provides real-time identifications of the CRs for the hospitals, as well as the records of the CRs that visit, as well, with including the areas that they've accessed. So it became important for hospitals to have a form of electronic attendance of the CRs that had visited their facilities. And so the digitization of CRICE has been able to then address and become a solution to this important need by the hospitals. So for the company reps or the CRs, they can use the program as a training that relates to their scope of practice, of course, and the level of that is related also to the level of access that they would require in order to complete their duties related to their business when they are within the facility. It can also then be used by the CR for them to be sure that they are adhering to the relevant regulations. And this would be through the training that is available through the CRICE program that highlights the different regulations and the declarations that would then need to be signed by the companies, as well as appropriate company members. The CRs then, of course, can also then use the CRICE through now the scanning process that is being followed as a form of evidence for their visitations and their work within field for their companies. For the companies, they can use CRICE as part of the due diligence process, which is to ensure that CRs are trained on their scope of practice as well as infection control. They can use CRICE as a risk mitigation in the event of a legal case. So, for example, in a case where a CR has performed out of scope, the reports and the different features that are available for the companies through the CRICE program can be used as a risk mitigation step, because through enrolling your learners or the members of your company to the CRICE, you have then offering yourself somewhat protection in that kind of a situation. The CRICE and the data points that are then available through, once again, the scanning process, the monthly reports, and the real-time emails that the company POCs receive can then be used by the companies as well for their sales. So in enhancing the sales territory analysis, as well as the SWOT analysis. The companies can use CRICE as a form of assurance that the CR is actually familiar with the different laws that actually impact their roles when they're in field. So, for example, there are modules covering elements of the National Health Act, whereby the reps are told, or they know that they would need to get consent for procedures. As well as POPI, where there are different scenarios that actually highlights the implications related to patient information and protection. Companies can also then use the CRICE program and system to ensure that there's the accurate information flow to the HCPs and to ensure that they have competent CRs. And this is also then through the declarations that would also need to be signed by not only the CRs, but the authorized members within the company. And this is to show that the CR has, or to declare rather, that the CR has undergone the necessary product training related to their duties. They can also then know that the CR has received the necessary vaccination and are infection-free, which is also through a declaration that the CR would need to complete before being awarded an access card. And then once again, the companies can also use CRICE as a form of evidence, so an attendance register and a real-time presentation of their sales force that is actually within field. Moving on now to the level of access. So there are 3 levels of access that exist and are part of the CRICE CAM system. So these are namely level 1, which is the white area access, level 2 being the blue area access, and level 3, which is the green area access. So these 3 levels do not only speak to the areas where the reps or the CRs would have access when they are within the facility, but it also then speaks to the CRICE course that they would need to be assigned when being enrolled onto the program. So if we start with the white access card holders, these are then the CRs that would need access or would have access to the consulting rooms, as well as the labs, pharmacy, and radiology. So white access card holders cannot enter the blue or the green access areas. And this is because they have taken an abbreviated course. So the CRICE general course is an abbreviated course, and it does mean they haven't undergone the necessary practical components like the donning and doffing or taken the necessary vaccination. The blue access card holders are then the CRs that would need to be assigned the CRICE excluding sterile field course. And these CRs will then have access to theaters, which would be excluding the sterile field, as well as the wards, ICU, cath lab, and CSST. So it is important to note that with the blue access card holders, they are able to be part of a procedure, so they can be present in theatre during procedure. They are just unable to scrub to enter the sterile field. The blue access card holders can then also access the white areas. And then finally, the green access card holders. These are then the CRs that would need to be assigned or have completed the CRICE, including sterile field. And these CRs can now scrub to enter the sterile field. I would just like to take this moment to highlight that CRs may be facing an access denial in a case whereby they do not have the mobile CRICE application, which is where they have access to their digital access card to scan when they are within the facility. So the CRICE access card, the digital CRICE access card. So as mentioned, the program is currently in its final phase 3 of piloting. So CRICE doesn't exist or does have 6 applications currently, and this includes desktop and mobile applications for the CRICE POC, which would be the company POC, the hospital or HPOC, as well as then, of course, the CR or the CRICE learner. We'll now have a look at the CRICE CPOC, starting off with the desktop application. So the desktop application is available at the web address cricecams.com. So if you were to enter the web address on your web browser, I would just like to make a note to ask that we do use Google Chrome to ensure the most successful and compatible access of the desktop application. And this is rather than Internet Explorer. So once you have entered the address, you would be led to or directed to the page as we can see on screen. So as a CPOC, you would then proceed to select on company. This would then direct you to your login page, as we can see on screen. And this is where then you would enter your credentials, being your username and password, which you would have received on the POC instruction email as received from no reply at Marston when you were enrolled onto CRICE. And once your credentials have then been verified, you would then be led on to, this is the landing page now of the CPOC desktop app. Just to highlight, on the top right-hand corner is where you can then be able or would be able to see your details as the POC. If we have a look on the left-hand side, so these are now all the tabs that are available on the CPOC desktop application. And this is where you'd use to complete all the features, the active features, or any actioning that you would need to do related to your CRICE. So on the left-hand side, we'd have your dashboard tab, as well as your learners tab and complete courses payments tab, which are the tabs you would use to then complete the online enrollment system, as well as get access to your staff status report. The POPOP tab is then the tab that you would then use to complete payments, which also includes the activation of your learner accounts. Your Reactivate Courses tab is the tab where the POC will then have access to the list of the deactivated staff members, with the Settings tab being used to change their password. So the last few tabs, which include the profile, learning, and assessments, these are now examples of the tabs that a POC would see if they are also enrolled as a CRICE learner. I would just like to highlight the level of access tab, which is the tab that POCs can then now use to determine the level of access that their CRs require to complete their duties within the hospital facilities. So if you were to select the level of access tab, you would then be led to the page, as we can see on screen, where you would have 6 questions that you'd find that you'd have to answer either yes or no. And once you have completed answering, you would need to simply proceed by selecting submit, and then the level of access that the CRs within your company or the specific CR you're looking to enroll would then populate as represented by the red box. So just to highlight once again, the level 1 is the white access card, and you would then need to proceed by enrolling the CR for the CRICE General course. Levels 2 is the blue access card, and these CRs need to be enrolled for the CRICE excluding sterile field course. Level 3 being the green access card holders, and these CRs needing to be enrolled for the CRICE including the sterile field course. Having a look now at the CPOC mobile application. So just to make a note, the POC mobile application is available on the Google Play Store as well as on the App Store. So you'd be able to download it. Just to highlight, it is represented by a blue-green logo. And this is just an effort to highlight the difference, as we will see with the HPOC mobile app as well. So once you have installed successfully the application, you will then see the page, as the screen rather, as we see on the final frame on the right-hand side. And this is where you then proceed once again to enter your login credentials as received from your POC instruction email. So once you have successfully logged in, you can see the landing page as of the frame on the left-hand side. So you can also then see that for the CPOC mobile application, you also then still have access to the online enrollment system. You have access to your staff status reports, as well as for any POC that is also enrolled as a learner, they have access to the learning plan. You can also then determine the level of access using your POC mobile application. I would just like to highlight that the POPOP tab is not available on the CPOC mobile application, which does mean that you would need to please access your desktop application when looking to complete payments or activate any learner accounts. So to highlight the burger menu bar, which would be on the top left-hand corner, a CPOC can select that burger menu bar if they're also then enrolled as a learner. As we can see on the frame on the right-hand side, this is where once again they will then have access to their learning, their assessments, as well as their learner profile, including their CRICE certificates and their access card, should it be that they have completed the CRICE course. I would also then just like to highlight at this moment the Contact Us in-app feature that can be used to reach out to the CRICE team, as well as the log out button, which should be used by users to log out of the app. And this is an effort to refresh, because the CRICE app is a rather dynamic and active app. So it does need to be refreshed through logging out and logging back onto the system. Moving on now to the CRICE HPOC desktop application. The CRICE desktop application for the HPOC is also available on the same web address, which is cricecamps.com. So once the HPOC has also then logged in using the credentials, as they would also receive on their POC instruction email, this is now the landing page of their desktop application. Once again, the top right-hand corner is where they would find their details as the POC. On the left-hand side is then now the tabs. That is where the POC can then access all the features for the hospital POC on the desktop application. So it includes the dashboard where they can find their news feed, their privacy statement, the GLMP good loan set management practice, as well as the training resources. We will have a look at a dashboard tab and a bit more detail. They also then have access to the visits tab, which is where they'll have access to the records of the CR's visits for the last 3 months. And in the current visits tab is then the tab that speaks to the real-time feature available for the POC, as this is where they would find the records of all the CRs that are currently within their facility. The report tab is then the digital version of the monthly reports that the HPOC receives. They have a digital version of that. We will have a look at the reports tab in a bit more detail as well. And then the QR codes tab is then where the HPOC can find access to the master codes of the QR codes that the CRs use to scan when they are within the facility. And similarly to the CPOC, the settings tab can be used in the event that the POC needs to change the password. So having a look now at the dashboard tab. So as mentioned, this is where the HPOC will have access to their newsfeed, which includes the privacy statement, the GLMP document, as well as the training resources. So as highlighted by the green box, this would be where the POC can access the documents like the GLMP, as well as download the privacy statement. The dashboard is also then where they have access to the training video. So it would be a real-time training video that takes the HPOC through the CRICE CAMs. This is also then available for the company POC under the same tab, which would be a more detailed training that is related to the CRICE system and takes you through navigating and actioning when you are using CRICE. They would also then have access to the training, other resources like the troubleshooting documents, which they can use to post within the facility to assist CRs. And we will also then be having a look at those troubleshooting documents in a bit more detail. The reports tab then, as mentioned, is the digital version of the monthly report that is available for the HPOC. So if they are to select the reports tab, they would be led to the page, as we can see on screen, where they would be able to then select firstly the dates that they're looking to get or see the report for. And if in the case that they have multiple facilities, they'd also be able to select the facility. But once they have filtered or submitted the selection, it would then lead them to the electronic monthly reports, as we can see on screen. So we will have a look at the monthly reports and all the different sections that we can find. This is now just highlighting that that's the same information that the POC can access, just that it would be via the desktop app on the digital version of it. Moving on now to the HPOC mobile application. So this mobile application is also once again available on the Google Play Store as well as the Apple Store. And just to highlight, so this is now represented by the orange-red logo, as we can see on screen. So this is the app, the CRICE app that the HPOC would need to install. Once they have used the credentials once again to access the system, they would be directed to the page, as we can see on screen. So this is now a representation of the HPOC mobile application. So they have access to the dashboard just as on the desktop application. They have access to the digital version of the CRICE report. as well as then the current visits tab. And then once again, this speaks to the real-time feature available to the POCs, because if it happens that they encounter a CR and they would like to validate that the CR has in fact followed the CRICE process and scanned in, they will be able to simply access their mobile application to find the current visits, which is the list of all the CRs currently within the facility. And then they would have access to any in-app notifications using their mobile application. Moving on now to the CRICE learner, so covering the mobile application as well as their scanning. So in order for or before a CRICE or CR can be awarded with the CRICE access card, they would need to complete the following 4 steps. So these steps include, firstly, step 1 would be updating and completing the profile. So this would include confirming the information that is showing on the system, as well as then uploading a headshot. And this is also then a headshot that is going to be used for the verification process, which is a once-off process completed by the HPOC or responsible hospital staff. So during this process, it is basically the confirmation of the headshot. So the hospital staff do receive a USN code that they use to then verify that actually the picture or the person they're seeing at the headshot does actually represent or is the person that is presenting this to them. And as this is a once-off process, it happens the first time the CR visits that specific facility, and it then locks in the headshots for future visits. Following this would then be the step 2, which would be e-learning. This is then where they would find all the different e-learning modules. So it would be dependent on the CRICE course that they have taken. So these modules do include aspects like covering, as mentioned, the roles and responsibilities of the CRs, the legal implication, as well as an extensive infection control module. Step 3 would then be the assessment. So there are 3 attempts available for CRs to complete the assessment, and they do need to score an 80% score. And then once this has been completed, the final step would then be the signing of the forms, which would be through the electronic signature facility that is available. So these now are the forms, as we were previously mentioned, that are going to be signed by both the CR and by you, the authorized member within the company, including the company declaration, as well as the declaration by the reps. And then once these 4 processes or steps have been completed, the CRICE learner will then be awarded with their CRICE access card. So as we can see on the far left-hand frame, this is now the app, or what the rep would see once they have completed all 4 steps. They have been ticked, and they will have a congratulations message. This is then the screen where the CR can then get access firstly to their CRICE certificates, but as well as then, of course, access their CRICE access card, which they would need to scan when they are within the hospital facilities. So if the rep does select on the CRICE access card, it would lead them to the page as we can see in the middle frame. So this is now an example of what the CRICE access card actually looks like. So in this example, we can see that this CR is actually a green access card holder, as we can see by the color of the background of the access card. So once the CR is within the facility, they've accessed the CR, the access card rather, sorry. They can then proceed by selecting digital access card, which would be the gray button on top of their headshot. This would then lead them to the screen as of the final frame. And this would then be now in anticipations for them to start their scanning journey. I would like to highlight that the app does need for the to be permission given for the camera as well as the GPS location, but this is only at the time of scanning, and it's not because there's any tracking of any of the user's activity, but simply because the QR codes that the CRs are actually scanning within the facilities are very location specific, and so the app would need to actually confirm that the code that the CR is scanning, they are actually within within that location. Going through now the scanning journey and the troubleshooting for the CR. So this is now the digital process that the CRs would need to follow to scan during their visitations in order for the CRICE records to be compiled. So firstly, upon entering any facility, all access card holders would need to report to pharmacy. So this is regardless of whether you are a white, green, or blue access card holder. So when they do reach pharmacy, this is where they would encounter, as per example on screen, the pharmacy notice. And this is where every rep would start their scanning journey within the facility. So if we have a look at the process as highlighted in the pharmacy notice, step 1 does present now the initial QR scan code that is going to be the check-in code that the CR scan upon arrival. Step 1 does say all company representatives on entering this facility scan this code. Step 2 then speaks to all reps. It then says all the reps can then now proceed to their relevant appointments within the facility. For the white access card holders, they will not encounter any other scanning procedure. They would need to return to pharmacy to scan the QR code under step 3 when leaving. But for the blue and the green access card holders, they would then need to follow the appropriate scanning process that they will encounter on the blue and the green area notice. And then step 3 is then now the QR checkout code that the CRs that are white access card holders would need to scan when they are leaving the facility. Moving on now to the blue access card holders. So for the blue access card holders, once they arrive to the appropriate blue area, they will then encounter the blue area notice. And if we go through the process as highlighted within the blue area notice, step 1 basically serves as a reminder for the CRs to have please report to pharmacy to scan the initial check-in code. Step 2 then speaks to the green access card holders, and it says if you're going to be accessing the green area, you may proceed to your green area notice. Step 3 is then the QR check-in code that the blue access card holder would scan when they are within the blue area. So just to highlight, once they have scanned the white area notice, once they've scanned in the blue area check-in code, it will automatically scan them out of the white area, and they would then be now appearing within records as a CR that's in level 2 access. The step 4 is then the final QR checkout code that a blue access card holder would scan when they are leaving with the facility. So step 4 says on exiting this blue area, scan this code, and then you can answer the checkout questions. If they are visiting any other area within the facility, they would then need to follow any other process. But if they are now finished with their business for the day, they can then proceed to exit. To highlight, this is the most recent best practice implementation, and it is an effort to try and minimize the traffic or the number of reps that now need to report to pharmacy to scan a checkout code. It allows the reps for the blue access card and the green access card holders to then scan the checkout code from the appropriate areas or the levels that they had accessed. To go through the process for the green access card holders, they would also then encounter the green area notice. This process, as highlighted in the green area notice, similar to the blue area. Step 1 is just a reminder asking the rep to please report to pharmacy to scan the initial check-in code. Step 2 is then now the green area check-in code that the rep would need to scan. And under step 3 is when they will then scan the green area checkout code once they have completed their business and are now looking to leave the facility. Within this document, we also then have or highlight the channels that can be used to contact the CRICE team for the CRs when they are attempting to scan. So when the reps are scanning a checkout code, before their checkout can be deemed as complete, they will need to answer 2 checkout survey questions. So the first checkout survey question asks the rep if product training was conducted during the visit. So as mentioned, the reps are the source of information. So these product training is where this information can be relayed. The second question is then asking, were the products discussed on formulary, were they loan sets or on consignment? And only once these 2 questions have been answered will the reps checkout be deemed as successful. We are now going to have a look at some of the error messages that the reps may encounter and the troubleshooting that may be related to those error messages. The first message being the criteria for access not met, use contact us support feature. So this could be an error message that the rep is encountering. In a case where maybe there is a breach in the level of access. So if maybe a white access card holder is attempting to scan a blue check-in code or QR code, or if a blue access card holder is trying to scan a green area check-in code. The CR may also encounter this message if they have scanned they are attempting to scan a checkout code before they've scanned a check-in code. Or then finally, this is also a message that may be encountered if the rep is not logging out on a regular basis in efforts to refresh the app. So as previously mentioned, the app does need for there to be refreshing through logging out, which was accurately done through the logout button as highlighted within the CRICE app. The second error message would be you are away from actual scanned location. So as mentioned with this error message, so the QR codes are actually location specific, and so the app would need to confirm that. So if it's attempting to confirm and it's not picking up the correct location, you may be encountering this checkout area. Or in cases whereby a rep has maybe taken a picture of the QR code at a hospital and is attempting to scan when they are not actually within the facility, they may then encounter this error message. The next error message would be you are already checked into this facility, and this would be in cases whereby a rep is attempting to scan a check-in code in an area where they've already scanned the check-in QR code for it. And then the last 2 error messages are the most recent pop-up messages, and this may be in cases, or the reps may be encountering these 2 error messages if they are still using the older versions of the app. So as mentioned, there are developments, and the app there are multiple versions of the apps, and it does need for the users to be using the most up-to-date version of the app in order to be able to successfully follow the scanning procedure. So this now is the complete document. So from the document that we were using to go through the scanning process and the scanning journey, this is the full document. As mentioned, the hospital POCs may use this document and post it within the facility in efforts to assist the CRs with their scanning journey. So this document also then now highlights the troubleshooting measures that the CRs may follow if they are experiencing any difficulties when they are scanning. So the 7 reasons and the troubleshooting measures are then highlighted within the document. If we go through them, the first reason would be if the CR has not yet completed the course, or there have been updates and the CR has not yet completed. So they may be experiencing errors or a pop-up message if that is the case. Secondly, if the CR has poor phone battery life, or they do not have a good internet connection. So just to make a note, in times of load shedding, that sometimes this does then influence the internet connectivity, which may then influence the scanning for the CR within the facility. Thirdly, if the CR has not yet given the app its permission to access the GPS location and camera, so as mentioned, they would encounter an error message saying they are not within the location, and that would be related to their permissions. If the CR has resigned and their account can be deactivated, which is a feature available for the company POCs if a staff member resigned, they will not be able to use that access card under that company name to scan within facilities. If the CR does not refresh, as mentioned, by logging out on a regular basis, they will have difficulty scanning, and we did see the possible error message that can be encountered. Another reason why CR may be unable to scan would be, as mentioned, if they're using an older version of the app, and this would just need them to simply delete and clear the data and then reinstall the most up-to-date version of the app. And the last reason, which is a more recent reason, would be if the phone has dull lighting, or if the CR is tilting the phone at time of scanning the code. So this casts a shadow onto the QR codes we have noticed, or if the camera has smudges or dust, it then interferes with the app being able to accurately pick up the QR code, and therefore it does mean it makes it difficult for the rep to scan when they are within the facility. Moving on now to the monthly reports. I'm starting off with the CRICE CAMS CPOC monthly report. So this would be for the company. So the monthly report is the 9-page PDF document that the CPOC receives on the first day of every month. Example of the first page is there now, where the CPOC, you can see the table of content. It is important on the top right-hand corner to take note of the noting or the reporting period that the monthly report is covering. And then, of course, you can use the different topics and headlines to navigate through your report. Page 2 of the CPOC monthly report is then where they will find the visits schedule. This is now the records of all the visits that have been completed by your CRs. It lists, as you can see, the elements like the time and the date of the visit, who the CR is, which hospital they had visited, as well as the duration of the stay. I would like to make a note that it shows when you see on your visit schedule, you would also be able to then see the area that the rep had access during the visit. So I'm just highlighting this because in some cases, you might find that you have a CR that is a green access card holder, but is showing as a level 2, which is a blue area, because that is simply representing the area that the CR had visited during when they were within the facility. The last two columns of the visit schedule is then also then the answer that the CR would give or had given when answering the 2 checkout survey questions. Page 3 of the report is where we find the daily activity overview. So this will then now show the distribution of show the CPOC, the distribution of the reps within field. So as we can see in this for this example, the company had most of its reps in field on the 20th, as it had 3 different visits to 3 different hospitals by its reps. The next page will then be the hospital focus overview, which would be representing the distribution of your visits by according to the different hospitals. So as we can see in this specific example, 30.77% of the visits that the CRs made at this company were actually to Netcare in Pretoria East Hospital. Page 5 is the overview of the areas accessed. And then once again, this just shows the areas that the CRs were accessing during their visits. In this example, we can see that about 90% of the visits were actually to the level 3, which would be the green area access level. Page 6 of your monthly report is where the CPOC can then find the adherence to the appropriate level of access. And this would just be showing the count or the number of CRs per hospital that had received an access denied. So you as the POC can be able to take note of the hospitals or the reps that are getting access denied when they are visiting the facilities. This would then be followed by the answers that the CRs had given to the checkout survey questions. So the first one being on formulary discussion, we can see that most of the reps have answered and said the products of consent during their visits were actually on consignment. And then this is then followed on page 8 by the education on the safe and effective use of health products, which would be the answer to the second checkout survey question, asking if product training was conducted. We can see at this company specifically, 100% of the answers by the CRs said that no, which means product training was not conducted. And this is also something that can then be noted because, as we've previously mentioned, it does become the session where there is the important relaying of the information related to the products from the CR to the hospital staff and HCPs. The final page, or page 9, would then be the disclaimer from Monsoon at the end of the monthly report. This is now an example that is speaking to the real-time feature of the CRICE CAMS program. This is the real-time email that the CPOC would receive as soon as a rep has checked into a facility. So as we can see from the example on screen, it will give them the name of the CR and the hospital that they have checked in. It is important just to highlight that, of course, the CR's details, like their phone numbers, are updated and are always reflective of the most accurate contact details, because in examples like this email, as well as the email that the HPOC would receive, it does actually include the phone number. So in a case where you as the COP would need to contact the CR, or the hospital POC would need to contact the CR, they could access the email and be sure to have the most accurate number to contact the company representative. This is then now the example of the checkout email that they would receive. So this is as soon as the CR checks out of the facility. And then once again, it gives the name of the rep and the facility. And it also then includes the answers once again to the checkout survey questions that were provided by that CR after that visit. Having a look now at the HPOC monthly report, just to mention once again, this is also similarly a 9-page document received by the POC on the first day of every month. The first page of the monthly report is the table of contents. Once again, it also does make a note of the reporting period covered by the monthly report. So the second page, or page 2 of the HPOC monthly report, is where they can find the electronic attendance register. So this now then lists all or records all the visits by the CRs from the different companies. So similarly, like the CPOC reports, it does have information related to the date of the visits, the times of check-in and check-out, the level area that was accessed by the CR, as well as the duration of the stay. It just simply lists it according to the different CRs, as well as the companies that they are representing. Page 3 of the hospital monthly report would then be the company presence overview, which then lists the distribution according to the different hospitals. So we can see, for example, at this hospital, 30.67% of its visits were actually from reps that were from the Zimmer Biomet. The daily activity overview then shows, it counts the number of reps from the different companies that have entered the facility. So for example, if we look at this facility, we can see that on the 9th, it had visits from 5 different companies. And so with regards to the number that is represented on this daily activity overview, even if a rep has access to multiple areas within the facility, they would be entered or recorded as one visit. So if it's 2 different CRs from the same company, we would be able to see this representation on this daily activity overview as well. Following this would be the overview of the areas of access. So similar to the CPOC monthly reports, this will then be showing the hospital the areas that the reps had visited. We can see that more than 90% of the reps at this facility as well were actually scrubbing to enter the sterile field, the level 3 access. Page 6 is then the adherence to the appropriate level of access. So just like with the CPOC monthly reports, this will show the hospital POC, the count, or it's the number of CRs listed according to the different companies though of the reps that have experienced or had an access denied. So the difference would be that in this case, it lists the reps according to the companies. Answers to the checkout survey questions will also then follow for the hospital monthly report. Page 7 is where we would have the answers related to whether or not product training was conducted. So as you can see in this answer, 60% of the reps had actually answered and said that product training was not conducted. Once again, this is then a note that can be taken for the hospitals because it's an important session that needs to occur. Page 8 would then follow that it's going to be the answer for whether or not, or whether the product was listed on formulary. So this then distributes the answers that the CRs had given for that specific answer. The final page for the hospital monthly reports as well is also the disclaimer from Museum Training Solutions. This is now the example of the real-time emails again that now the HPOC would receive once a rep has checked into the facility. So similar to the one that the CPOC receives, it will tell the HPOC, the rep, as well as the company that they are representing and give the contact number available on system for that company representative. And then the checkout survey question is the example on the far right-hand frame. And this is where the email will be received when a rep has scanned out. So as we can see, again, it does show the answer that the CR has given for the checkout survey questions. This is now an example of the real-time email, which is not an email, sorry, a push notification that the HPOC would receive through their mobile application as soon as a CR has entered the facility. So as we can see from the example on screen, it would give the name of the CR and it states that they have either entered or exited the facility. So if the POC would need to or want to get more information related to where the CR is within the facility, they would then be able to access the app or their desktop, their mobile app or their desktop app if need be. So this does bring us to the end of the presentation on the CRICE CAMS training. Just to highlight, as we can see on screen, you are welcome to reach.
Zandile, I see there is a hand from Michelle Israel.
Hi, Michelle, it's Fatima here. You may go ahead.
Hello, Fatima, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. So, congratulations on you and the team. You know, it looks like things have gone better and things are working a lot better for us as well on the system. So thank you for giving us a nice updated system. Then secondly, our company has undergone a lot of changes. CRICE now belongs to the Learning and Development Division, which is our division. And our emails are all over the show, access all over the show. We're battling to change all our businesses just to one email. It's really a struggle for us. And also when it's time for payment, it goes through to the wrong people's wrong email addresses. We really, really battle, and will really appreciate if somebody could help us just to fix all of that up, because I mean, we've been with CRICE for many years, and the email addresses and the passwords are just all over the place.
Not a problem, Michelle. So we can arrange a MS Teams session with Zindile, and she can walk you through it.
Great, thank you.
I saw there was a request for the slide deck. We most certainly will be sharing that with Caroline to post after the session. How long does it take for the CRICE card to become available? Edith is asking. So Edith, once the learner has completed those 4 steps, they automatically awarded with the digital access card. So we have automated the process of checking HPCSA registration numbers, that the signatures, etc., are all in order. We've programmed it in the background. So the awarding of the card is automatic and immediate. I hope I answered your question, Edith. Salo, yes, the meeting is recorded and Caroline will post a link to the recording. Are there any other questions? Antoinette, hi, how are you?
I'm good, and you?
I'm good, thanks.
Thank you very much for the presentation again. I have never encountered a scan out code like in a cath lab, for instance. Can one, if you have a green access card, scan out at the pharmacy again, which I now understand is only a white logout, or will that give an error? Because I have experienced errors at times.
No, you will not be able to scan out at pharmacy. So Netcare made us redo the scanning journey in order to limit the number of reps that are passing through to scan. Just for the sake of scanning, they need to go to pharmacy. So the exit codes are now within the blue and green areas themselves. So it's a matter of whether the hospitals you are visiting actually are posting green area notices up on the cath lab door or reception area. And if that's not the case, it means you don't have to check in or check out.
Okay.
So the hospitals are still, yes, the hospitals are still very much in charge of the areas they wish to control.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Lorinda, I can suddenly not access the system on either my desktop or mobile. Have logged a ticket. Any additional advice? So the best way is to send an email, Lorinda, to CRICE so that we can see if you actually do have an active account. If it's just a matter of logging in, logging out, to refresh your app, etc. So we will respond to your email if you have sent something. Alexandra, are radiology departments on board with CRICE scanning, as I have not encountered this today? To the best of my knowledge, the radiology departments don't have their own individual codes, or have not requested for individual codes. Radiology, pharmacy, and doctors' consulting rooms fall, as well as laboratories, fall within the white area. So as long as you are not going beyond the foyer of a hospital, a typical hospital, you are within the white area, and scanning in and out of the pharmacy area, the white area notice, is sufficient. Alexander, if you wish to consult with your radiology clients, and if you wish for us to onboard them if they require more specific scanning in and out, we can assist you. And that's applicable to everyone. If you wish to have more delineations within a hospital, we can always facilitate that process on your behalf. Can you provide a list of theatre sisters that can evaluate donning and doffing? See, I struggle sometimes to find a third person. So when we developed the donning and doffing practical, we worked with Toy Vermaak from Netcare. It was actually a Netcare requirement, the donning and doffing. They made us revoke all CRICE cards during COVID times so that all reps could take the donning and doffing. And then only once they have taken it, they would have been re-awarded with the access card. So we agreed with Netcare that we will make it reasonably easy for reps to complete their donning and doffing practical, which is why if you read the instructions, you do not need to go to a hospital for donning and doffing practicals. In fact, Netcare does not want you to use their staff for donning and doffing. You are able to use anyone who is medically qualified and who has experience with donning and doffing. You can even do it online, so it can be a simulated session, and you can improvise with PPE. So you can use your nightgown instead of surgical gown. So I would recommend that we review those instructions on the actual donning and doffing so that you can see it's actually a reasonably easy thing to accomplish. I hope I answered your question, Lorinda. Vilna, on the emails, I always get notice that the rep cell number is not added. Where do I update all the rep cell number? Good question. So Vilna, you go into your desktop, you go under learners list, you scroll to the extreme right-hand side and you click on the edit button. That's where you can edit. You can edit, in fact, everything: ID number, email address, cell phone number as well. The only thing you can't change is the rep's name and surname. And if you require that to be edited, you would need to send us an email. Well, now, if you send us an email, we can put that in an email as well. Are there any more questions? Yeah, I think Zandile did quite a good job with covering all the content and the detail, that we don't have too many questions. Are there any comments? Thank you. Are there any comments? Are there any, maybe I can, since we have some time, I can open up to the floor. Is there anything else you would like to see? Would you like us to develop new features? We've got approximately 44 new features in the process of being developed. We always like to get feedback. So if there's anything you want us to improve on, send us an email and we add it onto our list to see how we can make it happen for you. CRICE is a product that is it's a collaborative product because it's the one product where both hospitals as well as companies as well as industry bodies, etc., are all collaborating in the interest of the patient. And so if there's anything we can do on our side, please do let us know. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Zandile. Thank you, Caroline and Tanya, for arranging the session.